This is episode 1. You did it. Strap in. Let's go. It's undeniable. It's 2020. A brand new year. A brand new podcast. Welcome everybody. My name is Thomas Quinn. This is my podcast. It's called Undeniable. I hope you enjoy it. I'm having so much fun creating it. This is episode 1, and I can't think of a better first guest than one of my oldest friends. I've known him for over 30 years. Let that sink in. 30 plus years. The immensely talented musician and just an all-around great human being, Mr. Leonard Farmer from the band Francis Farmer is on the pod today. Over the decades, we have spent many late nights together, ending parties, having conversations just like this, discussing what it is to be an artist and how we deal with the external pressures of finances and family expectations to still fully commit to our passions. Does that sound familiar? Can you relate? I hope so. I know that having him as a friend has shaped my life for the better, because when you grow up in a small town, pre-internet, there isn't a lot of examples of people who are following an artistic pursuit. So when you find someone who is going through the same struggles, even if it's in a different craft, you can relate with them and encourage them, just as I hope this podcast will encourage you. I owe great thanks to his friendship, and I hope you too can get something out of our conversation. And remember that no matter what you're trying to do in life, follow your passion, hold the course, and continue down the path and keep fighting the good fight. So thanks for checking us out. We will be uploading a new episode every Monday. Please subscribe, share with your friends, help us beat the algorithm. And when we come back, it will be my discussion with Leonard Farmer. So the last time I saw you, it was at the Bovine Sex Club. You guys just played an amazing show. You were filming it. And I guess I want to know, 1, how did that feel playing such a great show and capturing it on video? And 2, what's your general vibe of the new lineup?
Yeah, the Bovine show was fucking awesome. I had a great time. That's probably one of my favorite shows that I've played. And I actually give a lot of credit to just really our group of fans and friends, and, you know, our supporters are just epic supporters.
Yeah, a lot of people made the trip.
Yeah, and I mean, like, and the ones who are there and everyone's like brings the heat, man. They bring just as much energy, I feel like, as I do on stage, you know. And like when your people that are out there to support you are bringing just as much as you are and just as involved and, you know, willing to play the games that I like to kind of play with people on stage, it's like it's pretty awesome, man. Like, it's a really nice feeling. And think especially too, man, as time's even gone on a little bit and you get people that will start to sing along or know kind of what to almost expect in a way at your show. They'll, you know, anticipate it and or like sing along with you. That's a pretty cool feeling, man. It's pretty nice.
I definitely noticed that on that show because of the shape of that room, how it's pretty narrow, so it kind of funnels us all to the front.
Yeah, the Bovine's a great venue. Like, it looks like, even from the video perspective, it looks very aesthetically cool. It's really awesome in the sense that, like you said, you've got sort of more of a narrow width, and it concentrates your audience, kind of becomes a little bit more focal.
Are you guys putting out a live video? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so there's some really great video footage. We recorded sound the same night and had varying degrees of success. Also, only half of our set, actually a little less than half of our set, ended up getting recorded. But the sound was a little fucky. So we've got one video that's put together right now that's really great. We've actually had it together for, you know, let's call it maybe 3 months at this point. The thing is, we don't have that song out yet. So I'm kind of a little bit torn because it's like I would want to not have it be the first representation in a sense, or it's fine if it's the first representation and it's backed or timed with the single release. You know what I mean? And then it's like, then it makes me feel a little bit better that I've got kind of these two different representations. People can hear what's like in my mind versus the best I could salvage from that audio.
Were you planning on releasing it as a single?
That song?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in this day and age, like quote unquote single is a different kind of thing, right? It's like how much does an album matter? So at this juncture, it's like almost everything is getting released as a single. And yes, I would certainly do that, although I would have it coupled with an album.
Well, why don't you break down the Francis Farmer?
So Francis Farmer originally started as a solo project. I was playing in a hard rock metal band at the time called Mindsight. And, we'd hit a couple kind of lulls. Things were moving a little slower than I wanted. I'd also been playing a boatload of acoustic shows by myself just to make some money and all that kind of stuff. So a number of friends, 2 or 3 close friends, if not 4 or 5 of them, basically all were saying at similar times, like, man, how come you don't do like an acoustic record? You should do an acoustic record or whatever. So I was like, I kind of took it as a sign. I was like, all right, cool. I'll go with that. Then, the name even came up as, so it's my middle and last. My name's Leonard Francis Farmer III, and my brother Shane actually was the one who came up with the name Francis Farmer. I was playing with a few other names. As a singer-songwriter project, Francis Farmer being a name sounds cool. Then there's, the Nirvana references and the actress reference. So, I kind of looked at it like you got the alliteration, the FF thing. And then you got also this whole bunch of subconscious marketing is already kind of done for you in that people will hear the words and will be like, I feel like I know that.
I know you've mentioned that someone thought you were a Nirvana cover band.
Anthony, our bass player, one of my best buds and bass player, when he first saw, I was only playing as a duo, myself and another drummer at this one show, and he was actually playing in a Nirvana cover band. So he saw Francis Farmer on the same bill as their Nirvana cover band and thought, oh shit, is this another Nirvana cover band?
Dueling Nirvana cover bands.
Yeah. And then basically he saw us performing as a duo, just one guitar, vocal, and drums, and he's like, well, fuck, these guys need a bassist. I never had all the answers, but just the same, I didn't come this far to throw it away. Nothing great is meant to be easy.
That's a clip of the title track off Francis Farmer's first album, Elusive Dreamscapes. Now back to our conversation.
Then finished one record that way as a solo act, few rock songs, basically over the course of also doing a whole shitload of solo shows by myself and even doing an acoustic record. I realized that it's not singer-songwriter stuff. It's like me dumbing down a rock song to be represented with an acoustic guitar. Mm-hmm. Or in most cases.
Yeah,
not
you've always kind of wanted to rock.
That's always been more my passion. And then I think it's after Mindsight had broken up and I'd been doing more of the solo shows and everything, I kind of just hit a point again where I'm just like, fuck, man, I want to be playing in a band. The solo thing, it's cool. I mean, you kind of live and die by the sword, if you will. You're solo up there, so you look really good or you look really shitty, depending on how you're performing. Yeah. But it's just not the same, man. And inevitably, it never turns out as well as when you actually collaborate with other people, and that's something else I've learned along the way. Firstly, it's more fun, sometimes more of a pain in the ass to collaborate with people, but it's more fun, and your songs always end up turning out better.
They're bringing a whole list of influences, a whole list of skills that you won't necessarily. You can program drums, but you're not a drummer, so...
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Or I can play bass, but I'm not a bassist.
Yeah, so there's going to be
they just think about it differently.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the first record. It was called Elusive Dreamscapes.
Let's put a time frame on that.
Oh, fuck, man. That was a while ago now, dude. A real good while ago. And that album, I was making 3 albums at the time. Once again, working with Mindsight and then working on my brother Shane's project Unraveling all at the same time, which was back in, let's call it 2010, 2011. Francis Farmer wasn't originally a replacement for my other band. My other band actually was far more my focus at the time. Francis Farmer was very much a side project. And then it was a couple years after that project kind of dissolved. And I was actually left in this really fucked up mind space, just a really not good spot, right? Because I've dedicated all my time and energy and effort to a project for now the better part of a decade. Yeah. If not 8 to 10 years anyway, right?
We're talking building studios, recording all your music.
Yeah. Another full album and an EP and like a whole boatload of shows, starting to get on like label radar, conversations and shit like that. And then that just pretty much, that ended up dissolving. And I was really lost actually for that period of time. And my mom had passed away similarly. The longest relationship I'd had also dissolved. So it was like, for me, I was in this headspace where I'd lost 3 very foundational items in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a lot of my identity through those different people and project and all that kind of stuff too, right? So then I just was really like not driven for a while. I was like I said, pretty lost, threw myself into my next relationship very heavily, really just lost my sense of self and direction. And then, after that relationship ended, and then I'm just like, now it's like, obviously the one project ends, that relationship that I went balls deep into, head over heels, balls deep was a little bit figurative. Then it was just like, what the fuck did I just do with my last 3 years? Like, I didn't move on my career. I wasn't moving on anything except for that. And, that's a cardinal error in itself. As a kind of kick this project off in the next sort of dimension that I see for it, I want to get back into doing the band thing. I'd recorded 4 or 5 demos by myself. I put together this fundraiser, traveled out to BC, worked with this drummer out there, went to a really sick studio. It was a really great experience overall.
Whose studio was it again?
This was the Warehouse out in British Columbia, Vancouver, British Columbia. This is Bryan Adams' studio.
Yeah, you're saying there's a lot of big names who had recorded there.
Like so many, like AC/DC, Nickelback, Matt Good records there all the time. Like, I couldn't even tell you how many bands have recorded there. And then, obviously, Bryan Adams himself is a pretty Canadian legend, Yes. So actually, he was world stage. Like, that guy's huge.
When traveling the world, he was probably the most known Canadian artist.
Yeah, man. And apparently the story went that he everywhere he was traveling around the world, he would hit up pawn shops and places like that. And he was just scooping up all this gear.
Okay.
So that's where he would find these prized possessions at one point that all of a sudden, like when the digital era started happening, a lot of that all warm, amazing analog gear started becoming semi-obsolete, which is really weird. So he ends up scooping up all these amazing pieces of gear for pennies on the dollar. And then, after he's got a bunch of it, now has the wicked space out there in BC. It was a great studio. It was a great experience, man.
Wow.
To that point, it was the nicest studio I'd been in. That trip out there, that put down the first foundational pieces of the Rebirth album,
yes,
which is the one that I'm still actually technically chipping away on.
The first block of 3.
That was the first block of 3. And actually a couple others. The first block of 3 and then one other from the second EP. I ended up finding different drummers for the other stuff because it felt like it was a better move for the songs.
This is a good point to listen to the title track off the Rebirth EP, Chapter 1. Now back to our conversation.
To speak on the notion of releasing singles, as a working musician or working artist, you're basically coming home and you're working on all your stuff. You've got to find the energy and time and motivation and everything to keep going after you've already done your work day, already held up with your other responsibilities, right? So I've found that, banging out an entire record now and just waiting 2 or 3 years to do anything or release anything to the public just doesn't make the most sense.
Yeah, unless you're like Tool or Radiohead or...
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely, man. And if you've got that, you've already got that position. And as well as you're coming up in an era when the album was more the bread and butter of the industry, right? So Radiohead, Tool, An album is more of a journey, right? And I think just in today's general society, we're not necessarily looking for that journey and to get in the headspace of that record and those artists for an hour.
Yeah,
most people want a song. You know what I mean?
And that's just it, an hour. I know growing up for me, that hour was meditation. That hour was
100%.
That's what I lived for, was you get home and you put on it, it's so loud that you can't hear anything else. And that's where you are until it's over. And I still do that walking through the streets with, headphones now. And I'm sure everyone does, and podcasts and whatever. But like, there's something so visceral about a good album that puts you
in their world.
Which exactly.
Is something otherworldly if it's one of your favorite bands, right? Like they're the only ones doing it that are living in that world,
yeah.
you know?
And I guess that's part of this whole experience that I'm trying to create here, is to allow people insight into these great artists that you might not know of and nobody's telling you to listen to. So I'm going to tell you to listen to them.
Yeah, you've always been a dude that's, you're out watching tons of live shows. I've always, there's been plenty of artists, actually a fucking boatload of them that's, I never even heard of except for you. And then I all of a sudden hear them in the mainstream maybe 4 or 5 years later, and now they're the biggest band in the world. Like Arcade Fire, I remember you telling me about back in the day, years before they were, years and years before they were big. Kings of Leon. I remember you talking about watching these bands in Montreal on these smaller stages or whatnot, and just being like, who are these? I had no idea who they were at the time. And then you're like, now they're the biggest band in the world, 5 years later. And you're like, oh, snap. Tommy was telling me about that.
Yeah. I always thought I should have been an A&R rep, but
that's
never got it.
I respect that though, because you're out there keeping your ear to the grindstone, and that's really cool. My brother Shane's good for that too, and actually my brother Andrew too. They come out with these dark horse people that I've never even heard of, and I'm kind of brutal for it because I'm not out there searching. I live in music in my mind, almost all the time, if not working on them, writing songs, whatever, or envisioning where we're going. So I'm kind of guilty of not searching for a ton and sort of rely on my friends and, close people to be like, dude, you need to listen to this,
Oh, I'm the same way. When writing, I won't really want to read if I'm in a creative mode. Maybe if I'm editing or I'm trying to get inspired to do something else, sure, I'll saturate my mind with all I can find. But when you're actually in it, you don't want to be like, am I stealing from this great work? Am I doing this yet?
Yeah.
It's like you need to follow your own vision.
I know that from the time that I even started in the industry too, it's just early 2000s. And at this point, the whole industry is just on its head with the internet and has no idea what's going on. I think it's just, still the industry is partly lost in the sense that it's never going to be what it was in terms of what labels were used to and all that kind of stuff. But I know it's been particularly interesting to navigate from the sense that, the old format was be a good band, get picked up by a label, who then puts some money into allowing you to become an even better band and hires really amazing engineers to do all your stuff for you. And now all of a sudden you're out on tour. They've handled all that marketing shit for you.
Yeah.
All your marketing. And now it's it's such a different world. Not only do you have to be a good musician, you've got to be an incredible entrepreneur. You've got to be incredible in marketing. You got to be incredible at so many different things.
Yes.
And since they're not picking you up and taking risks on newer projects or new bands, you've already got to be a viable business. That's where a label picks you up. You're already a viable business. They want to take you to the next level and take a piece of the pie. That's where it's at. But the thing is, you're out here creating your art. You got to learn how to wear all those different hats, the entrepreneur hat, the engineer hat. You got to have your own videographer, your own, all that kind of stuff, footing the bill the whole while.
Yes, exactly.
And working
without
a job.
Any money. Yeah, without any money.
And doing all that stuff. Then create yourself, become a viable business, and then maybe they're interested in what you're doing. So your path and trajectory to, learn how to navigate all of that, it's quite the thing. You're no longer just an artist. You got to be left brain, right brain to the max. And for the introvert artist that used to exist, good fucking luck.
Yes.
The artist that you're used to, just being able to live in that world.
How many posts do you have on Instagram today?
Oh, dude. the expectations that you're getting your music and your art for free via the internet, right? So it's like,
you sell t-shirts, you sell merch, you sell a tour.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Your music is technically not something that you should expect people to buy. You know, I'm of the mind you give it to them for free because they're going to get it for free anyway. Offer them an opportunity to pay for it so that those with that kind of goodwill mentality will do it. At this point, it's not something that you can bank on, and that's why labels and the bigger part of the industry is not really willing to take the same risks that they used to because they don't know how they're getting their money back.
We talked a little bit about the end of the album and, how that has its effects, be it positive or negative, depending on where you stand. The rise of these streaming services also allows you to find all this great art that if you want to go back and date us back to the early 90s, we had one little CD spot at a
furniture store in
Gravenhurst.
Yeah, Naps Furniture.
Naps Furniture, shout out.
God bless their souls, for giving us an option for music.
Exactly. So it's a good point to go back, I think, to discuss Gravenhurst, because you guys might not know this, but Leonard and I have known each other since we were about 5. I remember when we met, I was getting introduced to the class before first grade.
So we took French immersion together, and
very progressive ideal back in the 80s that, especially for a small town of 10,000 people.
That's really a big part of that too, I know actually my life's definitely been enriched though learning French. I feel like you just become so much more adept at learning languages in the future, and if you start traveling, you're more open-minded to learning other languages, more open-minded to culture. I think there's a lot of positive effects on your brain just taking in other languages, especially at such a young age. I think I stuck with it a little longer than you. Did you end up finishing the whole high school program too?
I didn't do high school.
Right. Okay, so I did stick with it longer than you. I thought so. I think, I managed to probably keep a lot more than a lot of other people, and that said, still lost a boatload, man. Good French tangent, man.
We gotta bring it in.
So now you know a little bit about Tom and I and how we knew each other.
Whose fucking podcast is this?
My bad, man. I'll step off.
I'll ask the fucking questions here. So you mentioned, your mom, your dad. You were the eldest of 3 brothers.
Eldest of 3 brothers. My parents were high school sweethearts. One from the city, Toronto, and the other one from up in Muskoka, Gravenhurst. That's my parents. So, spent my first few years down in Toronto, then moved up to Gravenhurst when my parents were splitting up. Went back and forth between Gravenhurst and the city, and I personally love it. Because you've got all the benefits of a small town. You get to know friends. Tom and I have known each other for 30 years. It's pretty crazy when you think about that. Yeah. And you got that benefit. And then, back when I'm 13, I had one buddy, our friend that we went into school with in the French immersion class, Matt O'Neill, who played guitar. Shout out to Matt O'Neill. He played guitar, and I thought that was a really cool thing. And then my other buddy, the best friend in all of public school and all that, Corey, he had started dabbling in guitar. So, between Matt doing it, I just thought it was super cool. And he was right into playing Nirvana songs and stuff like that, which I think was influenced by his older brother, Josh, from what I remember. I can remember us all sitting around and cranking out Nirvana videos. And I think a lot of that was influenced by his older brother, but
quite interesting how you were the eldest, so you had to kind of bring the music or bring the influences to your siblings. But both Matt and myself, we had brothers who were 5 years older than us. Mm-hmm. And that experience of just getting this raw, grungy sound, because this is 90, 91 when we started.
Totally. We're talking what are we, 6 years old, 7 years old? Man, I remember when Nevermind came out, man. My Uncle Michael also has an influence. My parents were both avid music listeners. And then my Uncle Michael was someone who introduced us to I remember listening to AC/DC and Guns N' Roses literally as a 5 or 6 year old.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at my younger cousins and they're listening to Barney and shit. And I'm just man, I'm so happy that we listen to cool music.
It's true. There's a study I would like to see. Put that corporate Teletubby music against Rage Against Machine. Because again, I remember listening to Rage Against Machine.
At that point, we're probably 12 or something like that.
ish, killing in the name of on in class.
Fuck you! I won't do what you tell me.
Yes. Yes. Take that, teacher who's trying to control our minds.
That'll learn you.
Yeah, exactly. So we got French immersion. We got some really good raw music coming down the pipe.
Yeah. And then I think took interest, like I said, from Matt. And I remember borrowing his acoustic guitar actually for a little chunk of time. And I remember the first few songs I'm learning, like Come As You Are. I think like at this point, I'm like probably 13 years old, dabbling with the guitar, borrowing it from a friend. I remember Bullet with Butterfly Wings as well, being one of the first songs I had started to learn. That's like, we're talking 96-ish now. Yeah. So like I said, we moved back down to Brampton. It was part of the divorce agreement. And living with my dad was a little intense compared to what I was used to. I think, him and I are different personalities and we butted heads a lot growing up. I'm pretty rebellious. He's pretty rigid or likes things done in a certain way. And that doesn't jive well for me personally. And then I just saw like moving to the city, my brothers were more impressionable. The environment was very different in the way people were and treated each other. And like I felt like in watching my younger brothers, I was like not happy with the effects that I was kind of seeing on them. So as a collective, we decided to move back to Muskoka. And the only reason I'm really mentioning this is that when I moved down to my dad's place, I would come home from school and I'd probably be playing guitar, let's call it 2 to 5 or whatever hours a night, So like I left Gravenhurst, I could barely.
So it was kind of like your crossroads.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about that. Because I was wondering, one, do you think it was just where you were at and you were going to go there naturally, or do you think because of that you were channeling certain emotions?
Oh, dude, like. I know when I really dove hard into it, there was firstly, I didn't know quite as many people.
Yeah.
But, we had a bunch of friends on that street that we grew up with as well. So I still knew some people, but then also like, I remember when we came back to Gravenhurst, it created this whole legal dispute. And it was a really fucking hard time where my parents they weren't talking really. And I was like, it was really shitty. I don't even really like thinking about it. But I remember really, really like just diving into guitar at the time. And like at that point, that's all I did. I didn't sing. I say this to people all the time. I don't even know what the fuck I would do without music. I think it's like literally kept me moderately sane. Years and years, man. It's like, it's therapy. It's that escape, that thing that you can go and it's just yours and you're in your own, you're in your own world. You're creating your own world,
Yeah, no, for sure. That's why we do our art, because it's our release. When do you write your first song?
Give or take 16. And then at this point, like I started, going pretty hard into that kind of whole world, creating my own riffs, doing all that kind of stuff. I mean, your first few songs, you're very much looking to your favorite artists and you're very much like templating what they did. And, you don't have your own sound. You're just kind of mimicking what they're doing. I remember pretty distinctly though, like towards 17 or 18 years old, I'd be up often until like midnight or sometimes like 2 a.m. on school nights, like just imagining songs at this point and just in that whole headspace. And it was at that point I'd always wanted to be a lawyer. There's an intense program down at Western, which is like this, they've got this double degree program where you've got like, you're a lawyer and you're doing a business degree concurrently. And that's what I wanted to do up until I was like that age. I always thought I'd be a lawyer or something. Then after I started kind of, I guess, paying attention to my intuition, which was this stuff's keeping me up at night. This is like, I'm really passionate about this. Maybe I should just do this, much to my dad's chagrin. Sorry, Dad. I love you, Dad. It took a long time before him and I were like, seeing eye to eye about anything to do with it. I think going to school to do some like learning engineering, that helped a bit.
Okay, so we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So back, hey, I gotta keep this. I'm gonna try and keep this on the rails a little bit. Little structure here. You're writing your first songs. We can't just gloss over Woodstock. Shit. I mean, it's a shared experience. We both went to Woodstock 99. We were 16.
16 years old, yeah.
My brother drove us and our good friend over the border to Rome, New York, and just let us go.
That was my first like real official concert.
Yeah, same with me.
That was a whole other world and experience. That was nuts, man.
My brother still talks about how he takes a little bit of credit for your music because you told him that made you want to be a musician.
Huh. Sorry, to want to rise to that level and be able to have the opportunity to perform in front of that kind of audience. Like that's so otherworldly, you know, to be able to, you know, you're talking like 300,000 people, something
at least,
nuts.
yeah.
Like watching like Rage and Limp Bizkit on like the peak night and just watching people jump like a fucking like wave or like a big sea like all the way back. It was nuts.
Yeah, that was quite the time.
Yeah. Like it's still the craziest show I've ever been to in my life, you know?
Yeah.
Like not to mention seeing like, oh man, how many bands and artists did we see? Like,
yeah, because we weren't there to party. We were there to watch music. Mm-hmm. So we would get up and watch as many acts as we possibly could. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing.
Yeah, it was unreal.
It was like mind-blowing as a kid from Gravenhurst who had been to the city a few times, but who had never seen I'd been to musicals.
Yeah.
But I'd never been to a traditional rock show before.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, just crazy. And then we're like right up at the bar for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
What sadly got cut short. And I remember the show getting cut short. They pulled the plug. They come back. They play Fire by Jimi Hendrix. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a tribute to Hendrix because it's Woodstock. They end again. And we're like, oh, that wasn't an hour set. That was pretty short. Mm-hmm. And you look back and there's just fire in all directions.
Right, yeah.
Because for the cinematics or what, they thought it'd be a good idea to hand out candles to everyone in the crowd. All weekend long, they couldn't start a fire, but now that they all had fire starters,
yeah.
Oh my goodness,
yeah.
This is
that's
also
a whole other scene. If you want to talk after it, like,
yeah, like we could go down a rabbit hole for days on that because it was like that's post riot, like, or pre riot, but like there was no walls anymore at that point on Sunday. Like you could already walk in. Mm-hmm. One hell of a show.
Indeed, my man.
Like you mentioned earlier, you weren't singing yet. I remember vividly one day you weren't singing. The next day you were in my room singing covers like it's nobody's business. Was it just out of necessity?
So I played in a band in high school. My first band was a three-piece. At the time, I was just doing guitar. You know, I think that's all I really could have mustered. It was cool. I mean, at the time I was really, shy about anything to do with that and really nervous. And you know what? There's a lot of years, man, like where I really didn't even think I could do it because it's like a little bit of a mind fuck when you start trying to learn how to sing and play. Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm used to things coming fairly easily to me, if you will. So something that I've got to sit here and work at and go like really slowly and develop the skills and all that. Yeah. So yeah, that time I started as a guitar player, we had a singer in that band. He decided he didn't want to do it anymore. Then there was this other Battle of the Bands coming up. I had met Shaynard, good buddy Shane Bales, who ended up being the other singer in Mindsight, which was my, I guess you'd probably say first like real band, like where we're recording and writing songs and doing all that stuff. And we're playing at this Battle of the Bands. And I didn't know how to sing and play well enough. So that was kind of that. I was like, all right, I'll revert to playing guitar. At that show, Shaynard, we'd only known for like that. Met him in the convenience store there. We started talking about like Tool and Nine Inch Nails and on these different bands. He whips out this like lyric book that's got like just filled. This guy's just been writing songs for like years. You're talking like if not 2 full notebooks of just lyrics everywhere, right? So. And obviously, I was new to writing too, so I was like, "Oh snap, this guy's been in it, cool." And then, funny enough, at that Battle of the Bands in Gravenhurst, my other longtime friend and really good buddy ended up being the drummer in Mindsight, that first band. His name is Ryan Chalmers, Sick musician, probably better than me at everything.
I think he's better than all of us at everything.
Yeah, probably. But anyway, he's playing in this Slipknot tribute band at that same Battle of the Bands. I'd never even heard of Slipknot, let alone like these guys are coming out wearing masks, like representing Slipknot and all that kind of shit. But watching him play drums, I was just like, holy shit. This is like a whole other thing watching this guy play drums. So him and I end up connecting. Me and Shaynard end up traveling out to Halliburton, where he lives, like an hour from where I was in Gravenhurst. We start jamming out. First song Ryan and I ever jam out on. It's literally still the craziest song structure I've ever come up with and the world's never heard or seen. It's like this 11-minute song. Like, yeah. But I was like, I'm jamming with him and I was like, man, this guy gets it. He like knows what I'm doing rhythmically, and most drummers that I play with, even if they're really good, they don't get what I'm trying to frame rhythmically. And this guy's like, got it. Just making shit better. Yeah, so I'd gone to Montreal in between that too. At this point, now young 20s.
First, before you get into Montreal,
yep.
You were talking about your dad and not understanding, and you were talking about your aspirations to go to Western. Did you feel like an immense pressure to go to university?
To say that this was not exactly an easy decision to make. If you knew my dad and or family or whatever, like the thing is, and it's like, it's kind of the source of the beauty of our relationship in a way too, is that my dad has always had a different kind of respect for me because I've always stood up to him. And most people will not stand up to him. They'll just kind of like submit to what his general will is, for better or worse, So yes, this was not exactly what he wanted to hear, like not even close. His son that wanted to do a double degree and become a lawyer and, and it's not an easy thing, man, because so many people these days, even still, a lot of people that I know that went to university, they were literally just doing it out of their parents' will.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, right. So
I started doing that, I should say.
At the time, though, it was, I'm a musician now. I'm kind of carving my own path. This is kind of twofold in the sense that I go to school for engineering. That makes my dad sort of happy, albeit not perfectly happy, but it helps for him for us to get on the same level. But ultimately for me, what it was about was, the experience living away in Montreal from home and all that kind of stuff. But really it was about being self-sufficient. It was like, I want to learn how to record music so that no one can stop me on my path. It's like, I'm not dependent on you for anything. I can at least get my creations and that much done, and that's why I did it, really.
During that time, you're still talking with Ryan and Shane?
Yeah, Ryan actually came out to Montreal as my test subject for the school to record some drums.
Oh, sweet.
Then it's really the three of us working on this project. Ryan could also play bass, phenomenal at bass, ridiculous at playing bass. Craziest drummer I'd ever seen, plays guitar better than I do.
Whiz kid.
Yeah, he's just been a musician since he's super young, and one of those people that you're just like, whoa, you are good. I might as well stop.
Do you want to play in my band?
Yeah. Thankfully, we had some mutual respect there for each other, and I had a girlfriend actually who was from the next town over in Bracebridge, so I would drive back to Gravenhurst pretty frequently, so still in touch with Ryan and Shaynard often enough. It's also noteworthy too that Ryan and I were starting a business together. We started a corporation together at the time for recording music, the business, all that kind of stuff. And the irony that played itself out in time was that literally the day we went down to the city, we drove down to Toronto 2-3 hours to incorporate, was the same day I dropped them off to play for a band called Fifi Dobson.
Oh.
Right. So I dropped him off for his tryout, you know what I mean? And then why I say it and playing being very, very representative of that time period is that I've got this buddy who's a sick musician and got this opportunity to play with this kind of up and coming pop act here in Canada. And so now he's afforded the opportunity. He gets the gig and he's now getting to travel to a bunch of different places around the world. This band gets to open up for a whole bunch of other well-established bands. He gets to play the Rose Bowl and fucking meets Hulk Hogan. And the picture with him and Hulk Hogan's so good. Anyway, so then my life was kind of once again fairly off kilter because I'd planned on moving with him working on this band, making a record, and living in Minden, which was not where I live. Now I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I moved down to Aurelia at this point with my mom. I'm like, and she ends up wanting to move out to Hong Kong, travel. She's become a teacher. She's traveling the world at this point. Now I'm the man of the house because she's gone, and now I'm renting rooms out. So somewhere in this era, I got my other buddy involved in the band, Adam Hillier, and then my other really good friend, Dustin, comes into the fold. Now you're getting the core elements of what were Mindsight at the time. We're down in Aurelia. We make this whole crazy studio. We like totally gutted this garage, built everything up, got all this different music equipment, and now we're working on the first Mindsight record, Gathering Mindsight, appropriately titled.
That was Breathing Skywards off of the album Gathering Mindsight. Now back to our conversation.
So that takes me through the first few years, our first time recording an album. And that was a really weird time in that you've got no boss.
Yeah.
You got no one telling you what to do. We had no one teaching us really how to record or what we're doing. So it's like, that was quite the learning experience.
So you guys are basically, and it's not like you're YouTubing it either. You're just like.
Oh, no, that's why you don't have YouTube.
Yeah, so you're just turning a knob, trying it again, moving the mic, trying it again.
Yeah.
Everything's literally from scratch.
Yeah, for us, like we had no one teaching us how to do anything. All this different gear, we've never used it. Like we've never done anything. And let alone like, first time really composing songs through and through, and then like learning about arranging songs. And like, the last 3 songs we recorded on that record are by far the best sounding and the most well done songs, on that record. And I'm not surprised. It's like by the time you've now gone through a year, 2 years, like studio construction, rehearsing as a band, all that stuff, and then you cycle back to your first songs because you're like, holy shit, we're way better now. We better go back and redo everything. So it was quite the process, man. And like I said, like one of the biggest things is having the discipline to do it all yourself, still working your job, still doing all your stuff. Ryan's now touring a bunch, so we're trying to capitalize on the time we have with him. Thankfully, Dustin, who had kind of entered the band through a mutual connection of Ryan named Chella Harper, Dustin and Steve, really another one of my best buds as well. He had some experience learning from his brother, who's actually a fairly famous Toronto hip hop producer, Tyson Kute. Did a lot of like the 90s, 2000s hip hop stuff like Cardinal, Chantecler, all those kind of bands. So thankfully, Dustin had a little bit more of a leg up and understood more. So we were kind of learning together and experimenting and just, developing our friendship, living together at that time. So now at this point, Ryan's living down in Toronto. Dustin's now moved back to Toronto. Myself, a new guitarist, Steve, and Shane are still all living up north. We were doing 1 rehearsal a week up north at the studio in Aurelia, 1 rehearsal a week down in Toronto. And we knew that we had to be moving onward and upward. Now we started coming down to Toronto, playing all the Toronto clubs, the Horseshoe, El Macombo at the time, Reverb, all these, Bovine, whatever, Opera House. And we're at this point also making our next EP, which was Mindsight Incarnate. The Mindsight Incarnate.
Legal.
Legal, yeah, that's right.
That was Bodysuit Test 1 off of the album Incarnate by The Mindsight. Now back to our conversation.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us up to Francis Farmer era, because at that time, that's our big chance to be like now working in a better studio, but now we got access to some more studio gear. That ends up being this whole other really cool experience for us to like get to use nicer stuff, spend a bit more money on how we're doing our recording. It sounds better. Great experience. Really enjoyed that as well. Now we're kind of getting back to present iterations of projects. And
I feel like if you're all right with it, we should give Sinbad her due because, yeah, we've talked.
We've referenced her a few times.
We've referenced your mom, and we've talked about your dad and his influence in certain aspects of your life.
My dad and mom, they butted heads a lot.
Very opposite.
Yeah, pretty different people. Grew up more with my mom. Like, we were more eye to eye and close in a lot of ways. And my dad, like I said, I love my dad. He's fucking fantastic. I've learned so many valuable lessons from my dad. We're just different people. But she was a lot more, generally just supportive of like whatever you did. She was kind of like a second mom to so many of our friends, like so many of our friends growing up. Kind of let us do our own thing. She'd let us have some parties and stuff like that. And she would prefer that we were at least under her roof rather than, being out causing shit in a small town. Because that's basically what you're doing in a small town. You don't have much going on as a teenager. So,
yeah,
you're getting into sports, you're getting into music, or you're probably out causing shit or doing drugs or drinking or something like that.
Yeah.
At young ages.
Battling the boredom.
Yeah, she's just a fucking beauty, just like I said, like a mom for tons and tons of our friends. You could probably speak a little bit to that or lend like a friend perspective at least. You know what I mean?
So Cynthia would never turn anyone away, would never not feed you. Very honest, openly, brutally honest, where she would tell you exactly what you need to hear.
And I feel like an important thing that I got from a lot of friends was like, would treat you or speak to you as though you were an adult, not a child.
Exactly. She came at you like you were a human.
Yeah.
That your opinion mattered and you should be trusted with your own thoughts. And I think as a young person, especially in a small town, it was refreshing not only to have someone be like, you guys are free to be you guys, just don't fuck things up,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, then we'll move forward there because, like I said, later years she went to university in later years, and then started traveling the world, and then was diagnosed with like a stage 3 or stage 4 cancer when she was living in Kuwait. Came back, we went through a really just fucking shitty time with her going through all that and battling that, and it was esophageal cancer, which is like just really incredibly painful. You can't eat, or like you're struggling to eat, all that kind of stuff. And she was a fucking beauty and very supportive of music. Like she'd be at like every show and like just encourage us, Yeah, anyway, that's now you know a little bit about Sinbad. Cynthia. Yeah. Jeez.
Your passion basically was the driving force. Everything else be damned. If you could go back and tell yourself something, what would you tell yourself?
I think so much of it is just mindset, and there were so many different things that I feel like I'm aware of now that I would have liked to have known more of. Even like understanding the collective energy of a band or project. When you're with people who are not headed in the same direction or who are sort of opposed to what you're doing or creating opposition or creating resistance towards the trajectory that you're headed for in a band or any collective, you're affecting that collective energy. Like your band, I'm going to quote Napoleon Hill here, not a direct quote, but from Think and Grow Rich. He speaks to the concept of having a mastermind. And he says effectively that anytime you're working in a collective of people, whether it's 2 or more,
yeah,
you've got your own mind, they've got their own mind, and then whatever you're working on collectively actually births this other metaphysical, if you will, third mind, a mastermind. That's what he called it. Making sure that whatever is happening with respect to that collective vision, I would be more in tune with what everybody that I'm working with, what their goals, what their visions are, understanding them inside and out. Like, you can't make somebody do what they don't want to do. And you can spend a lot of time trying to drag people along for shit that they don't want to do, and you're just wasting your energy. Not only are you having to go through that interpersonal battle where you're literally dragging people along, making it more challenging, but what they're really doing is they're applying a whole bunch of resistance into that collective consciousness. And if everybody is not aligned in that vision, you're fucking up that whole world and what it has the ability to bring towards you. You know, and that's, I mean, we could go on a whole other tangent that speaks to that notion, but those ideas are just things that I'd never even heard of, never been aware of, knew nothing about, you know, and now the way I approach things is just different. Like, if somebody doesn't want to do something or is not interested, I'm not going to fight them. Like, so much of it is your mentality and your ability to just like flip that corner. Like, if I want to stay there harping over, like, and I'll liken it to a girlfriend or something like that. When you're dealing in a band, it's very much like a girlfriend. The only difference is, you know, you don't fuck, you make music, right? So it's like, seriously though, it's it's maintaining relationships. It's you know, you got chemistry personal, of how you work with music. You got like, you know, I think it's very similar. You know, you can't force anyone to do anything. And if they're moving against you and that vision, then you are much wiser to just pack it up, cut it off, rip the Band-Aid off, whatever that looks like, and move forward and find people who are aligned to whatever that vision is and involve them in creating that vision. My vision is only my vision, but if I want to work in a collaborative with which I've already learned is better for music, for everything, you know, then you need to have people that want to do the same things, you know, can't force them. You get better at it with practice and awareness, right? But firstly, you need to be aware of what that is. And then you've got that ability to shift your mind. Yes. And you've got the ability to focus on the things that are good. Like, it's taken a long time in my life and a lot of shit kickings and then some education.
So what's next?
We've got another music video coming out very shortly for a song called Knock Knock. It's pretty fun. It's kind of like summertime in the 90s, like what we would have been doing as kids. So it's a really fun video. Our other two music videos so far are a lot more dark and serious. This song's more fun. It's more upbeat. I think actually probably more palatable than most things I do for the average person out there. But that's next. We've got another 4 songs beyond that are in the can right now. And where we're at is we haven't been doing live shows for a little bit. We've been focused on content creation. There's only so much time in a day, quite frankly. And when you're engineering all your own stuff, like I can either be in the rehearsal space every day being a really good musician, or I can be making songs for us. That's kind of my present trade and what I'm working with. So been focused on that content creation side of things, and now just really in this place, man, where I know that what we're doing is actually, it is become, if not becoming, undeniable. Like, and I know that. I actually, like, I feel it. I know it. And so, like, I've been shifting gears on looking at, like, what's it going to be like to represent or to, you know, procure some funding to help represent us out in the world. You know, because that's the other thing. Amongst all these hats, like, I only know that I can handle so many of them. I can't be the promoter. I can't be doing everything, you know, and I've got like great bandmates that I've been handling, you know, other stuff like, you know, doing some grant writing now, handling video, and it's fantastic to have that team. Looking to record probably another 4 songs. Like I said, I got 5 of them in the can right now, 2 more on the horizon, and then I'd like to record another 4. That way, anyone I talk to or meet at this point, I'm just like, if you want to be involved in this, you've got more than adequate proof of what we're doing and where we're going right now. You know, that's a really nice place to be because, you know, it's really easy to be so self-critical.
Yes.
You know, and you're striving to become better and better and better and better at what you do. But like, it's just cool to be in a spot where you're like, no, it doesn't matter what you do or your show. If you don't like it, that's fine, but it's fucking good for anybody who even remotely likes this genre of music, you know? So that's basically where we're at, man.
I think we got there. Yeah. You good?
Yeah, we're good. I mean, I guess the only thing I'd probably add is that if people wanted to find any of the music or anything like that out there, go to francisfarmermusic.com on Insta or Facebook. We're Francis Farmer Music. And that is pretty much that. Be on the lookout for Knock Knock.
We will, man. Great to talk to you, Lenny. I love you, buddy.
I love you too, buddy. Thank you.
So there you have it. Episode 1 is done. How did we do? We're brand new in this podcast game, so please take the time and subscribe. Give us a like, share us with your friends, give us a review. All this helps with the algorithms. You know how the world runs these days. Nobody gets to choose. It's all what's put in front of us. And there are literally thousands of podcasts. So help us separate from the rest. And I will continue to bring great interviews like this. So stay tuned, subscribe, and share the love. We'll be back next week. Thanks so much. Undeniable is a creation from Tomcast Industries. Theme music was created by Tony Malik.